In Clinton world, they have FOBs, Friends of Bill. In our world, we have FODs, that would be Friends of Dan. Chris O'Leary has been a guest here in the not too distant future. I guess it was 2017, right? In the not too distant. What did I say?
Past.
And he's the one who drinks, not me.
Yeah.
Dan, help me introduce Chris O'Leary and explain to the audience who he is.
Absolutely. He was last on the show back in December of 2017.
Right.
Chris, first off, is a very close friend of mine, one of my old college roommates, basically, in what we call the 1505. We just had Kyle Clark on a couple of weeks ago, the news anchor in Denver, in that same group. And by day, Chris is a media planner and buyer for a marketing and advertising agency, but in his passion is craft beer. And since he turned 21, he just turned 40 last weekend. He has been chronicling and visiting breweries and writing and tweeting about them. And he's got a very popular, excellent blog, a website based in New York City called Brew York. And back in 2017, when we had him on the show, he and I and a group of friends went to Austin, Texas to visit his 1,000th brewery, which was a brewery called Jester King. Yep. And now, 4 years later, last weekend, we met up in Greenville, South Carolina, and Chris hit his 25th, 100th new brewery.
Who knew that there were so many in the country? I mean, Chris, what's the totality? What's that universe, if you know? How many brew pubs, breweries are there in the country?
So we're the last number that we've seen from the Brewers Association is somewhere north of 8,500, somewhere between 8,500 and 9,000. And so I have a lot of work left to do. Of those 2,500 that I've visited, only about 2,000 are in the U.S. and still operating. So I have even hit the point where I'm a quarter of the way through all the breweries in the U.S.
What's the attraction for you? I mean, why do you keep going back?
Believe it or not, I think it has only about a third of it is the beer. It's the atmosphere. It's the community. It's really about just the way that a brewery presents itself as a community space, as a gathering place. A lot of times they are the anchor point of a neighborhood. And you know, the beer is almost secondary to just the atmosphere in a brewery. When I went to a brewery last night in Las Vegas, Nevada, that had trivia night going on, and it was boisterous and fun, and the bartenders invited me to play along with them. We lost terribly.
What's the relationship between facial hair and brew pubs? I asked this question because the closest brew pub to where I'm located today is wonderful. By the way, it's called Tired Hands. Mm-hmm. And every time I'm in there, every single guy has a beard. Like, no joke.
I have to say, I made the decision during the pandemic to get rid of my beard, but I was one of those for a while as well. It is a running joke in the beer industry that facial hair is a requirement for employment. So you're not wrong about that.
I mean, like you don't get your growler filled unless they see some stubble, right?
Definitely.
That and a flannel shirt.
Oh,
yeah, and a flannel shirt.
I'm actually wearing a flannel shirt right now, so I am a walking stereotype, I guess.
So I think I get the stereotype of like the brew pub guys. Tell me, who is the brew pub woman?
I don't think there's really, I have to say that the beer industry is trying, their particular breweries that are trying to do work their hardest to create a more diverse crowd, because the typical brewery crowd is very white and very male. And the way that you do that is by creating a more welcoming environment. And I think that a lot of breweries have become more family friendly, which certainly helps to get, couples to come out and not just like what Dan and I did last weekend, bring a bunch of guys to a brewery. And it's a challenge. It's definitely been a challenge for the last few years, especially living in New York City. I know the demographic makeup of my neighborhood, and it's definitely not reflected in the crowd at my brewery. So breweries are trying to find ways to be part of the communities that they're in, instead of just gentrifying or bringing people to a neighborhood that don't look like the neighborhood around it.
When you were here 5 years ago, I remember not having a depth of knowledge just about beer and the changes that had taken place in the industry. And that was about the time that a place near me opened up. I went in and I remember feeling intimidated because I walked down the aisle and I didn't recognize any of I grew up, drinking Genesee cream ale in the woods, not too far from our house with a bunch of my buddies, and I remember my dad, when I was a child, my dad drank Stegmeyer. I don't know if you've ever even heard of Stegmeyer, a big night for us in high school was if somebody got a 6-pack of Molson, like, wow, Molson, we're drinking Molson. And then I dropped off the radar and just became beer illiterate. But in the last 5 years, and maybe you inspired me, I must say, I've consumed a lot more beer. I've become more knowledgeable. I know what I like. You go out and you get these beers from all these brew pubs, and occasionally I've done that. I do have, growler bottles at home and so forth. But on a day-to-day basis, I like Sculpin. I like Flower Power, which, by the way, is from Ithaca, guys.
Yep,
right? You know that beer, don't you?
Oh yeah, that was one of my gateway beers.
Yeah, I mean, I love that beer, and I also like the packaging of it. I like Sierra Nevada as well. So whatever you would classify those beers at, that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy drinking.
Yeah, so you're a hop forward kind of guy, and I have to say that the breweries, a lot of breweries during the pandemic, when they unfortunately finally had extra tank space because they weren't producing as much beer, a lot of them started to pivot to lagers. So we're kind of coming full circle, where now a lot of craft breweries are making lighter, more simple beer that takes long. I mean, it's simple, but it takes longer to make because you're lagering, which takes longer than producing ales. And that's actually been good for bringing more people into a brewery too, because now you can appeal to Bud Light drinkers, just as much as you can appeal to people who love hoppy beer.
The thing is, it's like weed. You got to be very careful because not all beers are created equally. And if I'm out, I will say, what's the alcohol content? I want to have a draft or two. So I'll say, what's the alcohol content on that? Because if they tell me it's 9%, I don't want to do it, because for me, half the fun, like the other substance I referenced, is just the whole participatory aspect.
Yeah, I know. And I tend to go.
Was that
for
safely said?
Things. Yeah.
Yes,
it was. No.
She's laughing at me. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at your reference to that other substance, as if no one knows what you're talking about, and we all know what you're talking about.
People will talk about edibles, and I'm like, what's the fun of an edible?
I know you like the whole social process.
Soak it in and smell it, and
soak it in, and yes.
I'm sorry, gentlemen.
Sorry.
Before we were interrupted, she's 50 now, so it's hard to contain her. You were saying?
No, I tend to go for lower alcohol beers for that very reason. I really do appreciate that breweries have at least tried to create an environment where you can sip on something low alcohol and just enjoy the experience of being at a brewery or brew pub. But there's also plenty of breweries that are still making 8, 9, 10, 14% alcohol beers, and it's those I enjoy in very small quantities.
Chris, give me like a brew pub. You've been to 2,500. Actually, have you exceeded that now? You were at a place in Vegas last night. What's the current number?
Yeah, the number's 2,512 now.
2,512.
Yep.
So give me a place that really stands out.
I mean, so number 2500 was Birds Fly South Ale Project in Greenville, South Carolina. They were definitely a standout. Just a beautiful space in an old cotton mill with I mean, it's a wooden structure, and the brewery prides itself on its wood aged beers, so barrel aged beers and foeder fermented beers, and they are really. There was a reason that they were brewery number 2500 for me. I wanted a milestone to be a special place, and it was just a wonderful environment to sit down around a table that was made of the wood from the mill itself when they started to renovate, and sit around with friends and reminisce and celebrate a birthday and celebrate a milestone.
Hey, when I was in college, I lived in a fraternity for 3 of the 4 years, and we were on tap 24/7. And I don't think that I've had the tolerance level since those days, but I have to believe that you, if you're spending so much time in brew pubs, you must have one hell of a tolerance, huh?
I may. I think I do, but I'm also.
Well, Dan, should I ask you that question about Chris?
Dan might actually.
What can he handle?
No, he can handle it all, but that's the thing, and that goes back to the if you don't want a full pint of 9% beer, you can ask for a taster. You can ask for a 3-ounce pour, which is not going to set you back, and that still gives you the opportunity to have 4 or 5 solid sips of something that's a very good beer, but you want to have a few other of them. So, but yeah, no, Chris can handle his own, but a lot of times you'll just go to a brewery and get into a great conversation for 20 minutes, and it takes you 30 minutes to drink a beer. So,
hey, Chris, I'm limited on time, but I have to ask you this. So I'm looking at you because we're video recording this conversation while it's live on SiriusXM's POTUS. I can't see like the waistline. How are you doing if you're drinking all this beer?
I try to stay active. I am a runner, so that helps. I've even run 2 breweries. That's something that I do. But also, when I'm on trips and exploring a city, I will choose to walk between breweries instead of taking an Uber, and take a 20-30 minute walk, which typically is through a very industrial neighborhood that doesn't have much to see, but it at least helps me burn some calories that I take in at the brewery. So I
wish you all good things. Merry Christmas. Thanks for coming back. When you hit 5,000, you'll come back. Okay.
Sounds good.
That's Chris O'Leary, ladies and gentlemen. That was fun. Good stuff. Thank you, Dan.